Good afternoon. Well, I guess it's almost evening, isn't it? Good to have you with us this evening, or this late afternoon, if that it is for you. I'm just going to call our meeting to order, and for our March 18th, 2025 Municipal Council meeting. Madam Clerk, for the record of this meeting, please let it be reflected that Councillor Roy DiClemente is absent with notice. Are there any declarations of interest from any members of council? Seeking none, I will move on to item C, our land acknowledgement statement. The town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams Treaty First Nation and other Indigenous peoples. And on behalf of council, I thank them for sharing this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as East Gwillimbury's closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and the waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental steward of these lands, and we join them in these responsibilities. Item D on my agenda, we have no deputations at this time. Item E is presentations, and we have no presentations at this time. Item F is committee recommendations, and this is to adopt the Committee of the Whole Council recommendations from the meeting held on March 4th, 2025. And I'm looking for a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Crone, thank you. Be it resolved that Council adopt the Committee of the Whole Council recommendations from the meeting held on March 4th, 2025. All those in favor? And that's carried. Councillor Crothers, thank you.
Thank you. While we are approving committee recommendations, I would like to move to waive the rules of procedure to allow for consideration of the recommendation passed at today's CWC Council meeting regarding the proposed procurement approach in response to the tariffs. So we have same-day ratification on that. Staff have said that they find that that's important to get that moving right away.
Thank you.
So I would make that motion, Madam Mayor.
Could I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Crone. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried.
And Madam Mayor,
Yes.
So I'd like to move that we ratify that, and also to add to that, that we notify the region, the province, and the federal government of our motion. And I'm wondering if staff have a more extensive list of who they think we should copy on that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, staff have provided the resolution on the screen before you in terms of the entities that have been identified to be notified. So they're highlighted in blue on the screen.
Happy to move that. Second it.
Seconded by Councillor Crone. All those in favor? And that's carried. Councillor Leahy, go ahead, please.
Sorry to be raising this point after we just voted. It proceeded very quickly while I was trying to read it. Would you mind putting it back up on the screen for a moment, please? Through you, Madam Mayor, I was just going through the individuals who will be notified and CC'd on this. So you've included the local member of provincial parliament, MPP Caroline Mulroney, but I don't see our local member of parliament is Scott Davidson. So do we need to put those?
I believe it is on there.
Local, yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you.
We're at the adoption of minutes, item G, and this is to adopt the Committee of the Whole minutes from the meeting held on March 4th, 2025. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Foster, Councillor Crone. Be it resolved that council adopt the Committee of the Whole Council minutes from the meeting held on March the 4th, and that's moved and seconded. All those in favor? And that's carried. Item number 2 is to adopt the council minutes from the meeting held on March 4th. I have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor LaHaye, Councillor Foster. Be it resolved that council adopt the council minutes from the meeting held on March the 4th, 2025. All in favor? And that's carried. We are now at item H, statutory public meeting. And item 1 is in front of us this time, proposed zoning bylaw amendment 54 Bridle Path File, ZBA 2403, related file SPA 2407. This is a statutory public planning meeting statement, Mayor's introduction. Members of the public, this portion of the council meeting is for 2 statutory public meetings under the Planning Act. The purpose of this meeting is to inform and obtain public input on the planning application received by the town prior to a full technical analysis being conducted by staff. No decision, approve, or refuse the application will be made here tonight. I'd like to repeat that. No decision to approve or refuse the application will be made here tonight, just so everyone knows. Following the applicant's presentation, members of the public will be invited to offer their comments respecting the proposal. Submissions can also be made in writing at planning@eastgwillimbury.ca. If you plan to speak at this meeting, or if you wish to be notified of any other council meetings concerning this application, please complete a form located at the desk at the back of the council chambers. Got a hand waving there so you know who to look after. At the desk at the back of the council chambers. I will now ask the General Manager of Development Services to introduce the application, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. As was stated, we're here today for it's a public meeting for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The application was deemed complete on January 9th of this year. And the Planning Act does permit a person to make a request to council to amend its zoning bylaw. I just want to note that the zoning bylaw amendment is the initial step in this process, in an application process. And we're not here to make a decision here today, but we're here to listen to the public, here to listen to members of council. Once a full review is done or completed by staff and by agencies, we will come back to council with a direction report for council decision.
Could you tell me when a decision is made, how will the members of our audience this evening know that there is an opportunity to find out what the decision was?
Certainly. Through you, Madam Mayor, I do recommend that everyone does sign up with the clerk's office so that they do get notification of a future meeting. They can also reach out to the planning department, as you mentioned, planning@eastgwillimbury.ca, and next time we have this item come before council, we will ensure that they get proper notice that this item is coming before council.
Thank you very much.
At this point, we do have the applicant who is here ready to do a presentation to council to go into the details of the application before council today.
Welcome. Good to have you with us this evening.
Thank you very much for having me. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council, town staff, and members of the public. Thank you for attending today's statutory public meeting. My name is Alex Smith, and I am a planner for Michael Smith Plan Consultants Development Coordinators Limited. I'm here today to provide a presentation on behalf of the applicants, Jennifer McCabe and Leonidas Diamantros. This presentation will detail the zoning bylaw amendment required to facilitate the proposed vacation cabin on the subject lands, in addition to bringing the existing accessory buildings and uses into conformity with the current zoning standards. Slide 2, please. Thank you. So we have an aerial of the property here. The property is located on the north side of Bridle Path, west of Kennedy Road in East Gwillimbury. The property is approximately 4.02 hectares in area and has 141 meters of frontage on Bridle Path. The subject lands were acquired by the applicant on November 27th, 2020. Now, as you can see in the highlighted area here, if you look a little bit, a significant part of the northern portion of the property is covered in woodlands. And towards the southern portion of the property, there are several buildings and structures. There are no new buildings or structures included as part of the development proposal. The existing buildings and structures include a single detached dwelling, a barn, and accessory buildings and structures to both the residential and agricultural uses on the property. One of these accessory buildings is to the northeast of the single detached dwelling and is proposed to be converted to a vacation cabin, which is the primary focus of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. For full context, as I proceed through my presentation, a vacation cabin, as we present it in the context of this application, is a detached accessory structure which shall contain one lodging room accessory to the future proposed bed and breakfast use within the existing single detached dwelling. The bed and breakfast use is subject to site plan approval, but is otherwise permitted by the zoning bylaw and is not the subject of tonight's meeting or my presentation. Next slide, please. This slide shows the land use plan for the town of East Gwillimbury's official plan. A little hard to make out on here, but the subject lands are identified on this plan as being within the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan area, and they are within the Oak Ridges Moraine Natural Core Area land use designation. Next slide, please. Thank you. In addition to its land use designation, the subject lands are subject to several other policy considerations listed here. These policy considerations are discussed and addressed in detail in our planning justification report. Next slide, please. This slide shows the applicable zoning schedule for the subject lands. The subject lands, in this case, are zoned Oak Ridges Moraine Core. Next slide. Thank you. The Oak Ridges Moraine Core Zone permits accessory uses, buildings, and structures inclusive of bed and breakfast establishments, to a legally existing residential use subject to site plan approval. Further, the Oak Ridges Moraine Core Zone permits existing agricultural uses, buildings, and structures which existed prior to November 21st, 2001. New agricultural buildings and structures related to these existing agricultural uses are permitted subject to site plan approval. The zoning bylaw does not currently permit or contemplate an accessory use such as the vacation use proposed. As such, through discussions with town staff, a zoning bylaw amendment is required. Next slide. To facilitate the proposed development, a site-specific Oak Ridges Moraine Core Zone is proposed. The proposed site-specific zoning would include provisions to permit and restrict the proposed vacation cabin accessory use, in addition to several provisions to bring all existing accessory buildings and structures on the subject lands into conformity with current zoning standards. Next slide, please. This is a plan which shows the existing buildings and structures on the property and is the basis for the site plan application. As you can see, the northern portion of the property is vacant due to the significant woodlands on the property, and for greater clarity, the next slide will zoom in on the southern portion of the property. Next slide, please. Thank you. Here we have a little bit clearer picture of the existing buildings and structures addressed in the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Of note are the existing single detached dwelling proposed to contain the future bed and breakfast use, and this is located, it's the large building in the center of the image here, as well as the pathway leading north and east of the dwelling to the accessory building to be converted to a vacation cabin. So that's in the top right. This plan also shows the proposed parking area on the existing driveway east of the dwelling, which will accommodate the guests of the bed and breakfast use. So it's a little black hatched area just to the east of the dwelling there. Next slide, please. Thank you. This slide shows the applicable zoning requirements and how they compare to the existing conditions of the subject land. The subject lands currently conform to all applicable zoning requirements, save and except for the minimum lot area, maximum size of a detached private garage, maximum lot coverage of all non-agricultural buildings and structures, and the location of one accessory building or structure within the minimum front yard. While the subject lands do not meet the minimum lot size requirement, as per section 4.16.2 of the zoning bylaw, a lot in existence prior to the effective date of this bylaw in 2018 that does not meet the lot requirements of the applicable zone may be used, and buildings and structures thereon may be erected, enlarged, repaired, or renovated, provided the use conforms with the bylaw and the buildings or structures comply with all other provisions of this bylaw. The lot, which is the subject of this application, predates the effective date of zoning bylaw 2018-043. The existing detached private garage, which is just north of the property, has a ground floor area of 198 square meters, whereas a maximum of 120 square meters is permitted. The garage is a legal nonconforming use, which was constructed by the previous owners of the property and predates the zoning bylaw. The proposed amendment brings the garage into conformity with current zoning bylaw standards. The total lot coverage of all existing non-agricultural buildings and structures on this property is 568 square meters, whereas 500 square meters is permitted. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment addresses this provision. Finally, as a relatively minor point, there is an existing wooden shed encroaching 0.4 meters into the minimum front yard. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment would allow for this encroachment for the existing wooden shed. Next slide, please. Thank you. Several plans and studies were prepared in support of the zoning bylaw amendment submission, and these include a natural heritage evaluation, which was prepared by R.J. Burnside and Associates Limited, a site plan, existing floor plans, and elevations prepared by Larmer Design and Permit Drawings, a plan of survey prepared by Pearson & Pearson Surveying Limited, a draft zoning bylaw amendment prepared by our offices, a minimum distance separation report prepared by Clark Consulting Services to address the location of a new habitable building in proximity to agricultural uses, and a lot, area, and average grade plan prepared by Joe Topo Surveys and CAD Inc. Next slide, please. Thank you. There are several policy documents which are applicable to the subject lands and the proposed development. These documents include the Provincial Planning Statement, the Greenbelt Plan, the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan, the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, the York Region Official Plan, and the Town of East Gwillimbury Official Plan. All of these plans are detailed and discussed in our plan justification report, and I'm going to highlight a couple of the key policies in our next slide. Thank you. There are several policies from these documents which support the proposed development. The Provincial Planning Statement identifies the subject lands as being within the rural area. Sections 2.5.1 A and F permit uses which build upon the rural character of the area and leverage rural amenities and assets, in addition to providing opportunities for sustainable and diversified tourism, which leverages natural assets. The proposed development introduces tourism in the form of the bed and breakfast and vacation cabin, which highlight the character and natural assets of the Oak Ridges Moraine and the rural area. As per subsection 3 to section 11 of the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan, agricultural uses, bed and breakfast establishments, and accessory uses to such uses are permitted as proposed. The York Region Official Plan identifies the property as being within the agricultural system. Policy 5.1.4 of the York Region Official Plan provides that a full range of agricultural uses, agricultural-related uses, and on-farm diversified uses are permitted, but shall not interfere with surrounding agricultural operations. The proposed bed and breakfast establishment and vacation cabin are both forms of on-farm diversified use. Further, they are small in scale in nature and are taking place within existing buildings and structures and will not interfere with the agricultural uses on site or in the area. The East Gwillimbury Official Plan, section 4.12.2.1, provides that lands within the Oak Ridges Moraine Natural Core Area may be zoned to permit, among other things, agricultural uses, accessory uses, and legally existing uses. While a bed and breakfast and vacation cabin are not agricultural uses, sections 4.15.2 and 4.15.6 provide that both accessory uses, which are normally incidental and subordinate to a permitted use, and bed and breakfast establishments are both permitted uses in all designations. Next slide, please. Thank you. Comments have been received from several town departments and branches. These have been addressed in the comments matrix enclosed with our submission and will be further addressed as the planning process progresses. Next slide, please. Comments have also been received from several agencies. These will also be addressed. These have also been addressed in the comments matrix enclosed with our submission and will be further addressed as the planning process progresses. Next slide. Several comments have been received from members of the public, and I believe we will be hearing further on that tonight. These comments have been discussed with the client, the building consultant, and responses have been provided to town staff. These concerns, as well as any concerns which are raised here at this meeting, will be received, discussed with the client and town staff, and addressed further as we proceed through the planning process. Next slide, please. Oh. Thank you. Just as a bit of a summary on the planning process and next steps here, as previously noted, the zoning bylaw amendment is required to introduce vacation cabin as a permitted accessory use, to permit a vacation cabin accessory to a bed and breakfast use, and to bring all existing non-conforming accessory buildings and structures into conformity with zoning bylaw 2018-043. In the case that the zoning bylaw amendment is approved, a site plan process will be required to permit the bed and breakfast use, the vacation cabin use, and to bring all existing non-conforming accessory buildings and structures into conformity with zoning bylaw 2018-043. Next slide, please. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time and consideration of our presentation. My contact information is being provided on the screen here if you have any questions at all regarding to the application. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We are at public comments, item 4 in our agenda, and speakers coming forward, please give your name and your address. And we'll ask the clerk to advise of the registered speakers.
Through you, Madam Mayor, for this evening and for this particular application, there are 3 pre-registered individuals. I'm just going to call on the first individual who's registered to speak at tonight's meeting. That would be Noah Zielinski.
Good evening.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Noah, and I live at 35 Bridle Path, so that's the property right across the road. Can't hear you. Oh, I live at 35 Bridle Path, so that's the property just across the road. I stand here to address the impact this has had in our community since the resort was established across the street from our house. For years, our dead-end road was frequented only by residents. The serenity of our surroundings was a significant reason why a lot of us wanted to live here in the first place. 54 Bridle Path was acquired with the clear intent to develop it into a resort-like destination. Based on my understanding, there's another location in North America where the owners don't reside, and that I am afraid that once the location is up and running, this property too will be operating without their direct involvement. Construction started almost immediately after it was purchased, without permits or notice to neighbors, and by the first summer, guests were already occupying the premise. I want to emphasize that this is not a modest mom-and-pop bed and breakfast. This is an outdoor, high-turnover glamping destination, and notably, it was voted the #1 glamping site in Canada by HipCamp, and this just underscores the substantial scale and popularity of the property. Guests are often outdoors for the majority of the day, and as I understand, there are plans to expand the recreation aspect of the property. Guests arrive and depart at all hours. Significantly increases the noise of the road. The road's straight stretch to the stop sign in Kennedy becomes an invitation to some guests to pull out of the driveway and race to the end of the road. This behavior previously was unseen in our community, and the kind of driving does not align with the respect and consideration that longtime residents have always shown to one another. The resort markets itself as a recreation retreat, attracting visitors seeking leisure and entertainment. The primary recreation area is situated at the corner of the property, directly across from our house, separated only by a thin tree line and road. At night, the country sound carries effortlessly, and all day and every evening during the summer months, we are subject to loud noise, loud conversation, and late-night gatherings. This is only going to compound if this becomes an all-season resort with, for example, a hockey rink or other outdoor recreation activities. The proximity of these activities to our bedroom window makes it extremely difficult to have a restful sleep. And then the largest effect, and the main reason why I'm here today, is the impact that this has had on my mom. Her lifelong dream was to reside in the country. They retired, sold their house, and moved to 35 Bridle Path. 3 years ago, she suffered a traumatic head injury, rendering her unable to drive, and now she spends her days sitting outside, finding peace and immersing herself in nature. The continuous traffic and noise has shattered that peace. She was initially bewildered and confused by the sudden changes and did not understand what was going on. She would go and introduce herself to guests at the resort, thinking that those were her new neighbors. She frequently expresses her distress of the resort's presence, and for this very reason that she once cherished the property, is starting to fade, leaving her with the feeling of anxiety of the future of the road. While the sanctuary is promoted as a haven for rescue animals, there have been multiple instances where the cows have escaped onto our property. These unplanned encounters not only pose a safety concern, but highlight the lapse in animal management. The cows have escaped, and there's been no clear plan to catch them, and they've been left overnight in our property. The establishment of the resort proceeded without any prior consultation or approval from the town or its neighbors, and this lack of respect has generated significant tension within our community. The transformation of a residential property into a bustling commercial enterprise has altered the character of our neighborhood without input or consent. I urge the council to consider the profound impact this sanctuary has had on our community. Our goal is to restore the peace and safety of our neighborhood, preserving the quality of life that drew us here in the first place. Thank you for limiting the operations this past summer. With the resort put on hold, it was really highlighted how peaceful the area used to be and the direct impact that the operations have to everybody who lives here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there members of council?
Madam Mayor, there are two other individuals on the list.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Through you, Madam Mayor, your second speaker for tonight is Heather Bawden.
Good evening.
Good evening. Okay. Thank you. The owners of 54 Bridle Path have been running an Airbnb business since 2021. We, the neighbors, suspected that it was not being run legally, but we all looked the other way in order to keep peace on the street and not interfere with another's enjoyment of their property. Now they want to expand their operations. Now the neighbors can no longer look the other way. Sorry, I'm a little nervous.
Just take your time.
As well as increasing water usage, traffic on our quiet, dead-end street, and potential fire hazards, they want our blessings for running an animal sanctuary on a residential street. We, the neighbors, all love animals. We all knew that moving here meant we would be surrounded by wildlife. We love the deer, the foxes, the birds, the rabbits, and even the skunks. We hope to see more wildlife as they are dwindling. But the cows and pigs at 54 Bridle Path are not part of the wildlife that we expected. through our research,
Let's take a moment.
okay. I think I have to sit down.
Is there someone else that would come to the, someone else that may be able to deliver your message?
Madam Mayor, councillors, members of staff. But the cows and pigs at 54 Bridle Path are not part of that wildlife that we expected. Through our research, we have only recently discovered that while we are allowed to have chickens on the street, they must be located in the backyard, not right up near the street. This is a very clear guideline that has been ignored. Animal sanctuary. We, the neighbors, don't know what this term means. We don't know what animals that are allowed to keep on the residential street. We don't know how many animals there are that are allowed to keep on a residential street. We don't know how safety guidelines will be imposed on the animal sanctuary, safety for the animals as well as visitors and other residents on the street. I should mention the cows did get loose and messed up Michael's lawn terribly. They have big hoofs. We don't know where to find any information about what is allowed as an animal sanctuary and what is not allowed, or any type of restrictions that might have or how they would be enforced. I have looked for months to find the guidelines for an animal sanctuary in East Gwillimbury. If they exist, I can't find them. The animal care and control bylaw does not mention a sanctuary at all. It seems that while there are no clear restrictions, there are also no clear approvals. We neighbors feel that there must be measurable bylaws set in place that the owners and the residents can abide by. Without any regulations, we are not comfortable with the idea of an animal sanctuary existing on the street. The only reluctant fact I did find is that in Georgina, livestock is prohibited in residential areas. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We have one more speaker, I believe.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the last registered speaker that I have on my list is Michael Kingston.
Good evening.
Michael Kingston,
Thank you.
86 Bridle Path. Thank you, Mayor and councillors, for listening to us. We understand if the zoning for this property is changed, it becomes permanent, not subject to ownership or physical disposition. As neighbours, we have been willing to coexist for 2.5 years without clear evidence that existing laws, if any, are being observed. The new application to increase the rental profile beyond the owner-occupied status is of concern. Given that neighbours cannot trespass, it would need periodic inspection by the township to ensure that the approved status is being observed. I understand that that's difficult to organize because you just don't have the staff. Our concern is that the status of the current lot has not been clearly identified. It appears to already have been marketed and used as a bed and breakfast with some 40 pages of guest testimonies online since 2022. An animal sanctuary had been introduced. This includes cattle, pigs, dogs, chickens in the front leisure area. We have been surprised, as have others on the street, to find Highland cattle on our properties. As long as these animals are housed appropriately, this does not appear to be an issue, as long as they are permitted. We all appreciate the natural wildlife in the immediate area. The local deer population is almost gone, and the turkey population is now sparse. We have many smaller animals, including the protected red squirrel. With so much more development in the area, the 100 or so acres that fronts on Bridle Path has become a sanctuary for many insects, plants, and birds. Trillium is soon to be in bloom, and many of the native plants are happy that the snow is almost gone. We work collectively to reduce the impact of the invasive plants. The Black River runs to the back of our properties. This area still shows signs of the Hurricane Hazel many years ago. You may wonder why the majority of residents of Bridle Path are concerned. An influx of well-meaning and not country folk walking in an area without particularly good fencing and having access to firewood will impact our collective control over the possibility of forest fire. You know about California's story. A highly vulnerable aquifer will also be at risk. We are under the protection of the Oak Ridge Moraine Land Trust, and approval of the application could affect the ecological integrity. You may wonder also why two of the owners closest to the applicant appear to have withheld consent or chosen not to appear. Reasons could be concerns about reprisal and/or that the change and lack of monitoring of the new status could open doors for the next applicant. Thank you for listening to our points.
Thank you very much.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that concludes the individuals that have pre-registered. However, if you would like to seek any more comments at tonight's meeting, individuals were asked to register with Amanda. I'm just going to confirm if there are any more individuals.
Sorry, I wasn't aware. John Bolster, I just signed the form. I'd like to speak on behalf of my wife, who did send in some notes. I apologize, but she's unable to be here. I'm going to try and read them. Bridle Path is a dead-end street comprised of 10-acre lots. This is a residential area that is heavily forested. Resident properties rely on drilled or dug wells for their water and septic tanks. It is not a road that is conducive to a lot of traffic, with a sharp S-bend halfway down it. My concern is particularly fire. There are no dividing fences between properties, which make it difficult for B&B persons to walk not knowing whose property they're on. Many years ago, I was having a picnic with my small children when a shot went over our heads. In this circumstances, it was hunters, once again not knowing property boundaries or how far a bullet travels. Our forests are all joined and full of ancient deposits of leaves, fallen trees, twigs, and stumps that will burn easily. Last year, my husband and I went up and down the road collecting garbage and cigarette butts thrown out of the car. By cars. Do Leo and Jen already have municipal agreements to have these structures for rentals? It's a question. Are some kind of building permits required for tree houses? As these are being rented, are there some health and safety considerations or bylaws? This is a 10-acre lot designed to have one residence. There are several outhouses, and I understand that there is a plan to convert the garage into into several spaces for bed and breakfast. I know there was also a basement apartment, which at one time was rented out. The owners of the property indicated that they want to make the property an animal sanctuary. To this end, they have at times had 2 Highland cattle, pigs, and several chickens. I do not know how many of these animals are still on site. Are there any bylaws specifically health-related we farm animals on a 10-acre lot? Additionally, with a background in nursing, I'm also concerned about the recent bird flu cases with chickens and cows in the U.S. We have a large duck breeding complex near us. Reports from the U.S. indicate that this virus spreads by both wild birds and also the wind. Does public health have any guidelines regarding homes having cows and pigs in close proximity to humans? One of the major concerns, if they do get planning permission, is the question of who is going to monitor their obeyance to any municipal rules. It seems unclear whether any of this commercialization has already received municipal permission. We're under the impression that much of this expansion has not received prior planning permission. It's my understanding that expansion in this area is related to being on the moraine. It is not the ongoing job of other residents on the street, to monitor this. My concern is the impact on well waters, potential forest fires, and further commercialization. We all know that campers love to have campfires, and this is a residential area on a dead-end road, not suitable for this kind of zoning. Now, if I may, I have a shorter one that I have prepared. Is that permitted?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Okay. First, let me say that we have found both Leo and Len to be very friendly neighbors. They have no issues with them. They're kind, they're easy to talk to. They're very nice neighbors, and they're very nice people. We like them. Most of us on Bridle Path see our homes as homes, where we bring up our families, cut the grass, and tend the flower beds. We're relaxed, friendly, and on a first-name basis, all on the road. Most of us don't even have fences. Leo and Jen see their property as a commercial enterprise. They've operated an Airbnb for a couple of years, built a tree house with 2 suites, and erected 2 tents for renting. And if you go on the website, you will see these. The basement apartment has been there when they purchased the property. They've now converted the house into 3 bedrooms and bathrooms for B&B renting. That's the main house. So that's 4 in the main house. Also, the rear building behind the main house is being converted to suites. We heard 4, not 1. It was previously a workshop and parking. Add these up, and the numbers are shocking. Another tree house is planned and has been discussed. They have a hot tub, and they also have a wood burning sauna that go along with the B&B rentals. I appreciate that this is a huge amount of money for Leo and Jen. I appreciate that. It's a big winner financially. The other owners on the road do not want a commercial resort. This isn't B&B, this is a resort on Bridle Path. We're a quiet dead-end road. We do not have boundary fences between properties for the most part. We don't want people walking across our properties unless we know them. Big concerns are around the fires, which campers love to have, but they can spread so very quickly. Just a gust of winds and a few sparks will fly. Sadly, Michael and I have had this experience, and I've seen the fires just take off. And we don't have fires. Neither of us have fires anymore. And we used to have a water hose running right there to do it. But one gust of wind, and so we stopped that. It was scared the ever out of us a couple of times. So it just, and down there are roots and all these dead branches and twigs, etc., for 100 years. It just, even in a clear space, it just isn't. It's, as I said, it's too risky. Water and septic are obvious concerns, plus traffic. We cleared the cigarette bus my wife mentioned on the road, and no one there on the road smokes. How can you police this resort? Because it isn't a bed and breakfast. When you get up to a dozen, it's a resort. If it operates as an Airbnb for a few years with no attention. So the owners now want to make this complete change. We don't. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you haven't had the opportunity to speak yet, please fill out a form at the desk at the back of council chambers and provide your name and address when you reach the lectern. So if you'd like to speak, now is the chance to do so. I would ask that you give your name and address to our clerk at the back of the... Okay. Well, we'll take questions after everyone's had the opportunity to speak. Good evening.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak about this issue. My name's Jan Stanley, and I live at 18 Bridle Path. That's a couple of houses down from 54 Bridle Path. I've just got a few words that I scrambled together quickly. Bridle Path is a dead-end street with just 9 rather large lots on it, and normally hardly any traffic. We neighbors feel we're really lucky to live on such a quiet street. But that all changed after Leo and Jenny moved onto our street in November 2020. The next summer, they started a glamping business for Airbnb guests. But Airbnb is not legally allowed on our street. Nevertheless, they continued with lots of guests coming and going, parties, music, bonfires, and other activities, many of them outdoor activities, including volleyball, skating. The neighbors didn't say anything about this. We really didn't want to, we wanted to welcome our neighbors into our neighborhood, and we just looked the other way. But it's gotten out of hand. In 2023, for example, they built a treehouse. That's actually not a treehouse per se, but a building that's on stilts, and it's in some trees, so we call it the treehouse. And it's my understanding that they did not get a building permit to build that treehouse. They were in the process of putting up 2 more treehouse for their guests, Airbnb guests, I believe, when the town found out and told them to stop. And now they are trying to fix all that by asking the town to okay the use of the first treehouse for bed and breakfast guests. It does not seem right that the town should grant that. They've tried to evade the bylaws of East Gwillimbury up until the time they were caught. So they should not be rewarded now with a zoning change. The neighbors on Bridle Path are not happy with how our street has changed as a result of their activities on their own home, at their own home. Concerns range from well water issues, lots of strange vehicles coming and going on our street, fire risk from the bonfires that they have for their guests, privacy issues for next-door neighbors, and even concern about possible break and enters. Please consider that the owners of 54 Bridle Path have not been respectful of East Gwillimbury's bylaws, and that we, as neighbors, are very concerned that they won't be respectful of the bylaws going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any more individuals who would like to get up and speak tonight? Just go to the microphone, please.
Well, I really didn't want to do this. Madam Mayor, it's Sandra Palmisano. I live directly next door to them, 34.
Sandra, I would ask when you're finished speaking if you just go to the back and we could get the information from you.
I have done that, and I want to submit it. I just wanted to make sure that it would get to you because I started pointing things out. And I'm the oldest resident there. I've been there since 1959. I've never heard any noise. They're right next door to me. Possibly there are some issues, maybe water and stuff, but I'm sure that they would address that. And anyways, I will send a 93-page letter. I just want one question. What is the capacity of how many people can accommodate?
Who are you? Could you ask
I'm
if you have a
sorry.
question for our staff to answer?
Oh, I was looking at their lawyer, Alex Smith, sorry. What is the capacity of their rentals?
Could you answer that for us, please?
That's no problem. So I can.
Could you stand up, please?
Sounds good. Do you mind if I?
Sure.
have a quick
You
moment?
can share.
Thank you very much. Just for clarification on the proposal, the applicant can speak to the number of guests themselves, but in regard to the lodging rooms, there are 3 proposed within the existing single detached dwelling, 1 proposed within the accessory building, the treehouse that's been referenced. So the 1 lodging room is in there. There is no proposed changes to the existing garage. The extent is the 4 lodging rooms.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
The number altogether? 8 people? That would be like inviting my Italian family over for the weekend. Sorry. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I will submit. Thank you, Mayor.
Would you like to come to the microphone, please? Thank you. Yes.
Madam Mayor, Council, staff, I'm not accustomed to this. I'm quite nervous. And I'd like to mention one issue that has me scared witless, and you'll probably see that that's true. They have had a bonfire, a fire pit on their property. I think it conforms to regulations, 10 meters from anything burnable, any tree burnable. It's close to a wooden fence. The grass dries out in the summer. It's flammable. But if a spark should ever hit a tree on the east side, maybe a little bit more than 10 meters from the bonfire, it will ignite. They're all conifer trees. The whole group will go. They will jump from tree to tree going further eastward through that property, through Sandra's property. It'll hit our property. We have 2.5 acres of mature Scott pine on our front of our house. That will all go. We'll be left with blackened tree stumps. What that does to our property value, I don't know. But it'll go from there to the next property, Frank's, who's between us and Kennedy. When it gets to there, it's on Kennedy. How far north and south it goes, I don't know. But I live in fear of this possibility happening, and I would not ever want to see a bonfire on that property, and I would like the owners to guarantee that they will be there so it will not happen. If they can guarantee that, I will have a little more peace. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Those that didn't register and wanted to speak or were speaking, if you would register at the back so we have your information, your name, your address, your exactly where your home is, etc. So if you could make sure that you do that before you leave the room here tonight. Members of council, do you have questions at this time? Councillor Johns, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I do have a couple of questions that I just want to get clarity on so I can help get my head around things. Do the applicant, through you, Madam Mayor, to appropriate folks, do the applicants, is it the primary residence? It is a residence. Is it the primary residence of the applicants?
Perhaps we should determine who is going to speak on behalf of this group with the questions that may be asked of the members of council. Is there someone that would?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think it might be good to have the applicant's planner address some of these more kind of intimate details of the property. Okay. Our understanding is that it is residential use, but a confirmation of it being a primary residence is something that they can bring to council.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can confirm through discussions with our client that this is their primary residence. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johns?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I just have a couple other questions. Can I get the better understanding of, it was noted by a couple of folks who were presenting about our town staff coming in to visit the property, and then one deputant noted the fact that it was shut down for a period of time. Can I just get clarity on what was going on in this property from the town's perspective?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I have been made aware that there have been complaints lodged with our bylaw officers in the past. I believe there were 3 that I was made familiar with. I do have with me here today as well Jennifer Nichols, who is the manager of our bylaw branch, and she can might be able to answer those with some clarity for council in terms of what the concerns were specific to this property.
Ms. Ingram?
Through Madam Mayor, we have had complaints in regards to the property, specifically an Airbnb being run. First was in 2021, and again in 2023. It is our understanding that they have since ceased operation of that.
Sorry, just a couple more that I've written down. Do we as a town, I feel like we have, in my 2 years that I've been here, and I'm quickly trying to get caught up to speed, do we have an Airbnb policy outside of our regular planning policies?
I
Through you,
believe
Madam
it's going to
Mayor.
be answered by our staff. Go ahead, please.
I'll maybe start this off, Madam Mayor, and then let Jen speak to a little bit more as well. Just a little bit of a reminder that to council that in, I believe, December of last year, so fairly recently, there was a report brought forward by Harinder Singh, one of our bylaw staff, speaking to whether or not a short-term rental licensing and policies were appropriate for our town. I believe that report it made it clear to council that it wasn't effective from a cost perspective for us to engage in that right now, because there wasn't presently enough activity on that front to generate enough revenue for the cost implications of enforcing it. That being said, I believe the report also committed staff to review it within a year's time as well and report back to council.
Thank you. Councillor Johns?
Sorry, am I on? Okay, there we go. So I think there's one last question that I want to have a comment. So can you get clarity around, I know that we went through the process from the backyards chicken pilot, and I'm wondering what governs animal sanctuary? Like what are the rules around that within the property itself?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor, we do have, sorry, I'm just going to pull it up here. We do have an animal control bylaw. And in that animal control bylaw, there are some definitions and some elements related to livestock that are things that are within our control to kind of enforce. But perhaps you can, or your question is more specific in nature, and I might not be covering it to your, I guess, more fully. So if you can clarify, perhaps, and
Yeah,
you can get more from.
Thank you, and Madam Mayor, I don't necessarily think that I can clarify right now, because this is still a learning process for me to also get my head around, and I think I'm looking forward to the opportunity to learn and hear from other councillors, and as we go through this process, because no decisions are being made tonight. But just a final comment on this, there is clearly a myriad of challenges as they have been presented, and it's challenging given the fact that, you know, we're sitting here in this residential neighborhood, but at the same time, it's interesting, our next generation, of which I feel that I'm included, I look like I'm maybe 60, but the opportunities of which that have been afforded one generation versus what some of the challenges are now from being able to have a primary residence and be able to be sustainable within that primary residence, whether it be accessing through accessory dwelling units that are rented out, or whether it be renting out rooms or renting out spaces. It's the property owner has the right to earn a living and be able to pay the bills. The challenge is that the neighbors are entitled to their space as well. And so I'm looking forward to understanding the regulations as we go through this process, because yeah, we're in a changing world. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hay, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Mayor. I am reminded of how often these days we are challenged as a council by finding as areas develop, as areas change, how we find that balance between respecting the current residents with those who are newer to the community. And I have one question that I'd like to clarify, because it's a little bit confusing, the number of different properties and the different stages at which they are developed and proposed to be developed. But you mentioned a tree house, and a common theme with many of the deputants was the concern about fire, whether it's fire in a tree house or it's fire from a campfire. So I would like to know from staff if the property has been inspected, and what follow-up there is, or what regulations are there around campfires, and if there have been inspections conducted.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think with related to fires, Councillor, I think that's a good question to ask perhaps our fire department in terms of the permitting for fires. That being said, I think that the treehouse that's being referenced is, unless I'm incorrect, it's more of a kind of I guess a bunkie that's somewhat elevated on stilts. So it may not be, I guess, maybe like within a tree, but it's amongst the trees. Certainly, it's north of the primary residence and the accessory buildings on site as well. So the property has been visited in the past, as Mrs. Nichols clarified. There were several visits in the past for this property, and a couple of them were related to the Airbnb function. So I know that has been at that point addressed in both those times, and those cases were closed at that point. So it was over a certain amount of time, it was determined that that function is not happening anymore, and so that it was closed. It seemed to have repeated itself, and so another case opened up until the function was closed as well. And then it looks like we have an application before us now to bring the function, the uses on site into conformity with our zoning bylaw.
Councillor.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to follow up. Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor. There's a lot to digest. So I think that it would be very helpful. You mentioned at the beginning that there's going to be a report presented to Council. And do you have a timeline on when that report will be presented to Council for our consideration?
Through you, Madam Mayor, presently I don't have a timeline for that. It is dependent really on, I will say legislatively, the province does like us to review site plan applications within 60 days, but we're dealing with the zoning bylaw here. I believe we have a 90-day window, but sometimes these things take a little longer, Councillor, depending on the comments that come through to us and some of the work that needs to be done with the applicant, whether it's issues or concerns from agencies or staff. So to make sure that it goes through a proper protocol and make sure that we receive all the circulations that address all the requirements that are needed by staff or the agencies, sometimes that could take several circulations as well. So I don't presently have a timeline on it, but we certainly do want to do a thorough review prior to coming to Council with a decision on this matter.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to perhaps the applicant's planner, if I could ask you, just so that I'm clear, you mentioned that there were 4, I forget what you call them, sleeping areas or?
Yeah, 4 lodging rooms to
4?
keep consistent with the bed and breakfast definition.
Okay, and so 4 lodging rooms and how many individual units would that be, like separate building or separate structures?
So
Detached structures.
the structures that are involved are the single detached dwelling, which is the primary residence of the owners.
Yeah.
And then the tree house mentioned. So that one contains 1 lodging room, and then the detached dwelling contains 3.
Okay. Now, I've been on the, is it the High Camp website, and I see it. I also see some tents, what are they, yurts?
So my understanding through our previous interactions with the client, these were part of the previous discussions with town staff and staff visiting the site. Those have since been shut down.
Okay. So this is really about the primary residence and the bunkie. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, so I fully expect that the primary residence has running water and septic systems. The bunkie do they have running water? And I noticed there was an incinerate toilet there. Help me understand what are the facilities for the bunkie?
Yeah, so in regard to the specifics of the what we've referred to as a vacation cabin in the application,
Yeah.
There's the incinerator toilet, and there's not running water in the structure itself. I defer when it comes to the actual operations of the monkey. I would defer to town staff and our building consultant, who unfortunately is not here tonight to answer your question in more detail. But I would defer to their comments and their discussions on the matter.
Okay, so thank you for that. Through you, Madam Mayor, I guess I would ask staff for the additional detached structure, the vacation cabin. Would we not require that it have some form of running water and septic system or accessible to the septic system?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor, that would certainly, my understanding is this building presently has electricity, but no running water. So certainly that would be comments that we would expect to be raised by our building department if a building permit does in fact need to be made after this process, after this planning application. So and we would expect to receive those from our colleagues in buildings.
Okay. I appreciate that. And through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not opposed to Airbnbs. I think we're going to see more of them. I think I was one of the members of council last year that wanted to see tighter bylaws to help us deal with them, and I look forward to the review this year. As well, I think additional residency units are the better way to go, and I think we'll certainly see more of them. This is it's an interesting concept. Where I get uncomfortable is I think it might be verging more on the side of commercialism than an additional revenue stream here. But you know what, I'll save any further comments. I look forward to staff's report back on this. You've got your hands full with this one. No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers, go ahead, please.
Thanks. This is an interesting one. I have so many questions, but I would like to hear from our staff. I've read in the memo from staff that there's 15 buildings on this site, and I'm confused between the treehouse, the bunkie, the vacation cabin. Are these all the same thing? Okay, I'm wondering if you can take us through the 15 buildings that are on the site.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there certainly are a number of buildings on site. I'm not sure if the applicant's planner is comfortable going through the site plan, perhaps. Yeah, he's indicating yes, so maybe I'll let him, Madam Clerk, if you're able to put up perhaps the presentation once again. and we can get that slide up that shows the close-up of the site plan.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just bear with us as we work with production to bring that up.
Sorry. There's quite an assortment of, it's a mixture of buildings and structures on this property. So the primary ones in terms of size that we're dealing with is the single detached dwelling, which is in the center. And you have a detached private garage behind that. You have the barn in behind there, so that's the larger of the two structures to the rear of the detached garage, as well as an accessory structure associated with the barn. There is the sauna, which is on the north side of the path leading to the vacation cabin. There is the vacation cabin itself, in addition to the incinerator toilet outhouse. To the west of the main dwelling, you have the covered, you have the hot tub, which is on a platform. And in addition, when you start getting towards the front of the property, you have a mix of three, kind of by nature, almost temporary shed-like structures that town staff observed when we were out on the property that are accessory to the agricultural uses on the property, in addition to, I believe, 3 sheds accessory to the agricultural use, as well as a chicken coop.
Okay, so I've got, it says that there's 6 non-agricultural structures. So that would be the house, the cabin, the garage, the sauna, the outhouse, and the tub, hot tub. Okay, so this is sounding to me like a resort, not a bed and breakfast. A bed and breakfast is a bed and a breakfast, and then you go. So this is sounding more like a resort where they're expecting people to stay, expect them to use the amenities. Once you start getting this number of amenities, it's a resort. It's no longer a B&B, in my mind. We'll have to look at what the exact definitions are from the Planning Act. I'm very concerned about the, quote, animal sanctuary. Sounds lovely. I'm looking at these animals, and I worry about their well-being. I worry about the well-being of the wildlife that's in the area. Like I said, I have so many questions. This is on the moraine, and I hear you saying that the tents are taken down. Well, of course they are. It's wintertime. Of course the tents are taken down. But they still have their website up that shows not only the glamping tents, but also other tents. There's a blue tent there as well. And these are all on their website. So not only is there all of these bed and breakfast rooms, there's also all this camping going on as well. I certainly would not want to live next to that. And I'm not sure that our official plan envisions this type of thing on a residential street. We have so much land in other areas of the town that maybe could accommodate something like this, but I definitely feel for the neighbors and the concerns that they've raised. I also seen the pictures that there's multiple fires. There's fires at each of these tent locations, and I think that's against our bylaw too. So I think we need to, I would like to hear from our staff about how many ways this is breaking our bylaws, and what the owners are planning to do to bring it into conformity. Yeah, this is a mess, and I feel for the residents, and I'm sorry that you've had to all come out tonight, that we haven't been able to address this before now. Thank you.
Councillor Foster, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll be short with this. I have concerns when things come to us looking for forgiveness rather than permission. Again, Councillor Crothers mentioned about the tents, all that kind of stuff. These are the questions that I had. The biggest problem I have with this is you kind of set a precedence on the street. When another property on the street comes up for sale and someone gets the idea that this is a great business model, it's going to be hard to say no to the second one and maybe the third one, or however it goes. So my problem is setting that precedence. We have a lot of people on the street here with concerns that certainly make sense to me. I look at this and I think this is probably not a bad business model, but you're just in the wrong place. Go and buy 40 acres and use the back 15 for this type of a thing, and I think you're golden. But I do have concerns about the forgiveness versus permission, and I'll leave it at that, hoping that our report from staff kind of leads us to the right decision. Thank you.
I'm just going to take a moment. I've certainly listened to this. I have a rough idea where the property is and the pictures and et cetera. We have staff that go out on a regular basis and inspect housing and homes that are being built to make sure that everybody is safe when they're living in these homes. I haven't heard yet that the building inspector has been in to check any of these facilities, and the more you build, the less the corners are cut. I think it's a fine idea to have something like this along the way, but this is a residential area where many neighbors are being, I guess I would say, involved, or it's certainly some here tonight, to try and make it better or to make sure that it's safe for everyone, and that the property that they live in, they can enjoy as well. And I'm not sure that that's happening. We'll move along. I have a prepared resolution. Be it resolved that the Development Services Memorandum dated March 18th, 2025, entitled Proposed Zoning Bylaw Amendment, 54 Bridle Path Public, Meeting File ZBA 2403, related file SPA 2407 be received, and that the presentation from the applicant be received, and that comments received at this statutory public meeting be addressed by the Development Services Planning Branch in a comprehensive report to a future council meeting date. Any questions? All those in favor? And that's carried. In my haste, I missed having a mover and a seconder, and I cannot do that. So Councillor Johns and Councillor Leahy moved and second. Thank you very much. We could call a break at this point. I'm going to try and be a little tight with that. I know that we still have a large agenda in front of us, so if I can say 15 to 20 minutes to be back in our 10? Okay, if everybody's here in 10, we'll be ready to go. Thank you. We're back to our agenda for this evening. Item number 1, statutory public meeting, proposed amendment to draft approved plan of subdivision 18508 Leslie Street. And we have some procedural comments in advance. As I mentioned earlier, just a quick reminder, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to gather public input on planning applications before staff conduct a full technical analysis. No decision will be made tonight. After the applicant's presentation, we will invite public comments on the proposal. Also, you will submit your comments in writing. You can submit your comments in writing to planning@eastgwillimbury.ca. And if you plan to speak tonight or wish to be notified of future council meetings about this application, please remember to fill out a form at the back of the chamber. Thank you. I'm at number 2 on our agenda, and I'd like to introduce Acting General Manager Krubnik.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for this, for the moment to, or the time to present this report to you, or this memo. This is, once again, we're here for a public meeting related to a draft plan of subdivision for Acorn Development Corporation. Now, it's kind of you've seen an application on this file previously, and this is a parcel of land that's adjacent to an existing draft plan of subdivision application. It's a 0.144 acre parcel of land adjacent to a block 164 of a previous plan of subdivision that's come before council. Now, we're here to, or the applicant is seeking to incorporate this parcel into that other plan of subdivision. And so we're here still before council to do a public meeting to make council aware of this change, and letting council get an opportunity to, again, the council and the public comment on any questions they may have with how this parcel is being incorporated with the larger plan of subdivision. Once again, we're here for your questions, your comments, and to hear from members of the public. And at a future point in time, we will be returning to council with a recommendation report on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? The applicant agent, I believe, is in the audience. If you could come forward, please.
I am on.
Yes, you are.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council and staff. My name is Mark Resnick. I'm with the Acorn Development Corporation. As staff have outlined, we're here tonight for a statutory public meeting for an application to revise the draft approved plan of subdivision for the lands municipally known as 18508 Leslie Street. I have a brief presentation to provide a little bit of background and explain the purpose of the application. Next slide, please. On the screen now is an aerial context view of the area. You can see there's a small yellow parcel with enlargement in the inset images on the right that outlines the subject lands for tonight's public meeting. The subject lands are 0.144 hectares in size, and the lands are currently occupied by a single detached home. The parcel is located generally north of Green Lane and on the west side of Leslie Street in the south end of the Sharon Village. The purpose of the application, as staff have outlined, is to add the subject lands to the larger adjacent approved plan of subdivision. More specifically, it is to add it to block 164, a medium-density residential block. On the left side of the image, the larger plan in larger red outline is showing the approved plan of subdivision. And while the image is a little bit old, you can see the areas that have been disturbed are where the first phases of development of the subdivision have occurred, and they're actually now completed. And the areas to the east, inclusive of the subject lands, are still to be developed, subject to the fulsome approvals and granting of full servicing allocation. The more specific reasons for this application I'll explain a little later in the presentation. Next slide, please. So for a bit of policy context, the subject lands and the adjacent Block 164 to which we're proposing to add them are both designated community area with a local corridor overlay on the city's official plan structure, Schedule A1. Next slide, please. Diving into the land use, Schedule B5 outlines again for both the subject lands and Block 164, the land use is residential mixed use. Next slide, please. This is the zoning bylaw which implements the official plan. The subject lands again and Block 164 are both zoned MU5 with a special provision 84 and a holding provision. The exception 84 permits, in addition to the standard permitted uses of MU5, a series of townhouse permissions, being street townhouses, back-to-back townhouses, rear lane townhouses, and stacked townhouses. And the holding provision is simply there to ensure that development cannot proceed until the granting by council of servicing allocation, and for which a future application is required. So as a policy summary, I think the important takeaway is the official plan and zoning for both the subject lands and the adjacent Block 164 are the same. They will permit a proposed development of these lands for townhouses, and in our opinion, that aids and supports in our request to have the subject lands added to Block 164. Next slide, please. On the screen now is the historical draft plan that we are seeking to amend, and in the larger inset, the red line you can see is the revision proposed, which would incorporate the subject lands into Block 164 located to the south and the west. The entirety of the subject lands would be added to Block 164, save and except for a small little piece of 0.011 hectares along Leslie Street, which we envision would be required to be transferred to the region for a road widening. The reason for this application is that the subject lands and Block 164, upon development through future applications, are proposed to be developed in a freehold common element format for which a future application will be submitted. Under the legislative requirements when developing a freehold common element condo, all the lands are required to be within a block on a registered plan of subdivision. Hence the need to add these to the subdivision so they can be contained within a registered block. In that regard, it is very much an administrative reasoning for this application. Next slide, please. On the screen now is the current site plan we're working with in a concurrent site plan application that is already before staff for review. The site plan on the screen is a pending submission that will be made in the coming weeks, and this gives you a sense of where we're going with the lands. And you can see in the red outline how the subject lands get incorporated and are an integral part of the ultimate development of Block 164. And what the proposal is for a series of townhouses, 44 units that are composed of rear lane towns and 2 blocks of back-to-back townhouses. And as part of the development, as confirmed and negotiated in prior approvals, in the more purple square there, you can see the existing house will be retained, which was a condition of the prior granting of servicing allocation. And given the detailed application that is already underway, as this proceeds, we feel that as outlined in the staff report, the really detailed review of this application can remain with the site plan application. And the subdivision is really, as I said, an administrative necessity so that we can use a condo in the future. Next slide, please. In terms of policy considerations, the only one I really wanted to highlight for council was a reminder that for the proposed development on the screen, allocation has already been granted, and we would like to work through our site plan and see this come to fruition, both to bring housing supply to the community and because there is a clock ticking on the granted allocation that we want to achieve. In terms of next steps following questions from council and comments from the public, there is still a number of applications ahead of us, including the site plan, registering the block in a plan of subdivision, the hold removal, draft plan of condo, but before you tonight is really consideration for the subdivision, but just to know that a full scrutiny of these applications is still to come. And that concludes my presentation. I'm here for any questions you may have.
We're at the public comments, speakers to give names and address. I've confirmed with the municipal clerk that no individuals are currently registered to speak on this item. However, if there are individuals present this evening who do wish to do so, please indicate your interest and proceed to the lectern to state your name and address. After speaking, kindly complete a form at the desk located at the back of council chambers before leaving. I'm not seeing any speakers coming forward at this time. I'd like to ask members of council if they have any questions at all. Councillor Johns?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I don't know if we have had any representatives from Acorn since the previous application, but I think we have definitely been notified with staff. I just want to say thank you to Acorn for working with the municipality on that heritage home. It is it's deeply important to the community, especially when feeling kind of Leslie Street is the gateway coming into town. We're upcoming, we have our heritage district that would be starting to the north. We're going to be looking at taking that to the next step, and I think that outside of the heritage district, the fact that your leadership on the heritage house your leadership on the Heritage House is appreciated. And so to me, I think that with everything else that has been already in the process, and this to me is more of housekeeping, and it completes things and it brings things into alignment, and especially sitting around that Heritage House. And so I appreciate the presentation, and I'm in support of this. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the applicant. You mentioned that this will be set up as a freehold condominium corporation. Can you tell me, have any decisions been made yet on whether the condo corp will be looking after garbage collection, or will that fall to the town? As well, have any decisions been made on the water and wastewater system? Will it be your pipes or our pipes?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that will be borne out through the site plan approval. I don't have that detail on the servicing scheme, but that is a requirement through the site plan approvals to satisfy staff and the region in that regard, yes.
I will eagerly await the answer. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I'm not seeing any. Take a move for a second. I'm at the point of moving forward, and I'm wondering, could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Johns, Councillor LaHaye. Be it resolved that the Development Services Memorandum dated March 18th, 2025, entitled Proposed Amendment to Draft Approved Plan of Subdivision 185008 Leslie Street, public meeting be received, and that the presentation from the applicant be received, and that comments received at this statutory public planning meeting be addressed by the Development Services Planning Branch in a comprehensive report to a future council date. All in favor? And that's carried. There is item J we are at. There is no correspondence for consideration at this time. I'll move along to item K, which is Legal and Legislative Services Memo bylaw to dedicate certain lands as public highway and provide legal access. Queensville Phase 5 5/19T17001 in relation to item L. Staff, would you have the ability to provide us an overview of this? Thank you. I should have looked up first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. This is just a housekeeping matter, really, to dedicate as public highway the 0.3 reserve that we hold in order to restrict access until the subdivision is built. So this is all that's about.
So I'm looking for a mover and a seconder. Was anybody else have questions on this one before we moved along? Okay. Yes, a mover and a seconder. Councillor Crone, Councillor LaHaye. Be it resolved that the Legal and Legislative Services Memorandum dated March 18th, 2025, entitled Bylaw to Dedicate Certain Lands as Public Highway and Provide Legal Access Queensville Phase 5 19T-17001 be received. All in favor? That's carried. We are at bylaws now. Item L, bylaw 2025-018, being a bylaw to name and dedicate certain lands as public highway, and this is in relation to item K.1. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Foster, Councillor Carruthers. Be it resolved that bylaw 2025-018 be taken as read, enacted, and signed by the mayor and municipal clerk. All in favor? That's carried. We're down to item M. We have nothing under other business, and item N, confirming bylaw, moved by Councillor Crone, seconded by Councillor Carruthers. Be it resolved that the bylaw 2025-019, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council meeting held on March 18th, 2025, be taken as read, enacted, and signed by the mayor and municipal clerk. All those in favor? And that is carried. And that brings us to item O, moved by Councillor LaHaye, seconded by Councillor Foster. Be it resolved that the meeting of the council adjourn at 7:48 p.m. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.